Well, welcome to June in the California native plant garden. As we get into summer, the winter and spring flowering plants will stop flowering and start to go dormant. But there are some nice summer flowering plants that we'll take a look at. Take a bit of an overview of different parts of the garden so you can see what things look like during the summer. This is a nice view. In front right is sulfur buckwheat, Eriogonum umbulatum. You can see hummingbird sage right in back of that with the spiky flowers. In the lower front is a penstemon that's been flowered and we've cut that back. You see another sulfur buckwheat. Behind that, the rose sage, which we'll take a better look at. And behind all of that, the Santa Cruz Island buckwheat. And we will look at quite a few buckwheats, or the buckwheats we have available anyway, this time. So hope you enjoy the tour. Let's get started. Look at each flowering plant a little bit more specifically. Well, as promised, this is rose sage, Salvia pachyphylla, and it is in full bloom. This is the time of year for rose sage. It'll bloom a little bit throughout the year as it has moisture, but it really likes the heat of summer. And this is really a nice specimen. Spills over a little bit onto the driveway. Nice color. It'll bloom for quite a while. Like many of the natives, you do have to trim this back quite a bit or else it'll get too rangy during the fall winter. Really a nice look. Well, we got a hummingbird on this one just for a little bit. And this is rose sage, another plant, Salvia pachyphylla. Nice early to midsummer color. In back of the rose sage is Santa Cruz Island buckwheat. It's about 3.5 foot tall, 4 to 5 foot wide. This is full size. Eriogonum arborescens is the scientific name. It's a nice plant. It doesn't have, you can see the flowers are pinkish whitish, not real showy, but it's a nice consistent plant. It just grows and doesn't get too big, doesn't require any maintenance. We don't trim this back at all other than to deadhead the flowers in the fall. Santa Cruz Island buckwheat. Well, this is Mattole River Fuchsia, Saucionaria septentrionalis. And this one is in a planter, as you can see, and it gets regular water 3 times a week, and it grows like crazy. This is a native plant. Under more arid conditions, this will be much smaller, but this is a nice look to this as it kind of spills over the planter. It's just started flowering. This is going to flower all summer. It's going to have regular water. It's a little invasive. It's taken over a couple plants next to it, but that's okay. We'll go with it, trim it back a little bit when we need to, and it takes up a lot of space. But a nice summer flowering native plant. Here's another look at Mattole River Fuchsia. This doesn't get much moisture. You can see the difference in size. These are 3 plants here. They will flower, but much less aggressive. Not flowering as long. Obviously much smaller size. Here's another fuchsia, Saucionaria californica mexicana. And remember the mexicana. This is just a little bit different, lower growing, spreading. This doesn't get very much irrigation at all, just occasional, once or twice a month during the summer. And this will spill out onto the driveway over the rocks. It's a nice look. You can see it's just started to flower, and it'll do so for another couple months. A nice summer color. You can see a couple of the sages behind it On the right, Pozo blue. On the left, a very large Salvia clevelandii. A nice look. Here's a nice picture of mexicana, and in the background, rose sage. Mexicana will come on strong now that it's the end of June. Come on strong July and August, and start to spill over into the driveway. Here's a look at a few plants. This is Eregeron glaucus. It's a cross between another daisy, and it's Wayne Roderick daisy. One of the parents is a seaside daisy. It has the same genus and species name, but a nice look. Nice color. We have 3 plants like we saw in the last video. There's still firecracker penstemon. Hopefully you can see that in front of the desert marigold, Bailey multiradiata. A pretty picture. The yellow one is the desert marigold. Nice summer color. Often gets overlooked during the spring because it doesn't bloom until it gets some heat. And by the way, we talk about heat. We have had numerous stretches of 100-degree weather, which really causes the spring bloomers to shut down and the summer bloomers to come on. So that's part of the thing here in California, and you just work with it. Here are 2 plants, 2 buckwheats. The white-flowered buckwheat is California buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum, and behind it you can see is a red one, and that's Eriogonum, grande rubescens. Both nice buckwheats. The California buckwheat, the white one, has really come into its own this year. The first couple of years it didn't have a big bloom. The red one looks fantastic. It's going to have a few weeks of blooming here, and I have seen this get bigger blooms and just covered in red, but this is a nice look here nonetheless. Here's another look at red flowered buckwheat. You can see the basal leaves and the flower spikes. Lots of bees on the flowers. Nice red color, especially in contrast with the white, the California buckwheat in the lower right. Both of them make a nice plant. They do need to be cut back to the basal plant, and it's kind of obvious in this buckwheat where it needs to be cut back to where the leaves are each year, and that'll ensure that it looks good and you get a good flowering in the following year. Here's a quick look at narrow leaf milkweed. Still flowering. We looked at this last month. Just wanted to take another quick look. There's woolly blue curls, starting to get the end of its flowering period, and then some other sages and things like that. Here's a nice plant for a ground cover. We've taken a look at this before, but just another quick look. Baccharis pilularis, dwarf coyote bush. Nice ground cover, stays green, spreads out, doesn't have real distinct flowers, but a nice look if you're looking for a ground cover. This one's about a foot tall. This is one plant, probably 5 foot, 6 foot wide. Here's Encilia actini. We've looked at it before. Mountain bush sunflower, still blooming. Just a quick look. Here's a nice picture of the red globe mallow. There's an apricot and a purple one also, and it kind of makes a nice combination. Here's a picture of both the red in the front and the apricot in the back. They're the same species, just a different colored flower. Well, here's one that's a nice surprise. This is Linanthus californicus, prickly phlox. Kind of didn't notice. It's a new plant for the nursery, for the garden, and didn't notice it, but then it started putting on some nice blooms. First year we've had it. Should have a few of these available next year. Nice summer color. Nice kind of interesting plant. Prickly phlox. This is a nice sage for summer. Salvia clevelandii alpine. There's 2 plants here. One in the one right here and the right. You can see the flowers, the bees are on it. This is a selection of Salvia clevelandii. I believe it's a higher altitude plant, and therefore the later blooming. This could probably use a little bit more water so that you get a nice bloom on into summer. This has really come into its own the last month. It's the middle of June right now. It's a nice plant, one of our favorites. This does need to be cut back like most sages to promote new growth and get rid of old wood. Sometimes it'll grow upright, then if you have a storm or something, collapse. But it just spreads out a little bit and keeps on growing. Nothing to be concerned about that. It makes a little bit bigger footprint and keeps on going. One of the favorites for a summer sage. Here's a nice picture of Salvia clevelandii alpine. Here's a volunteer sage that really has a pretty nice bloom right now. And just once again to make the point, these plants do reseed. You can keep what you like. Of course you don't have to, but if you have the room, it's kind of nice to see where the garden goes as they reseed and find little places that suit them. Here's a nice look at Toyon, Heteromelies arborifolia. There's a sage in front of it. It is starting to bloom. You can see the blooms starting. Blooms are fairly indistinct. We'll probably get a shot at it next month. The other name for this, as I mentioned before, is Christmas berry. The berries turn red around Christmas time. And it's a nice persistent plant, doesn't need a lot of water. Nice green foliage, evergreen. For a larger screen, or if you want to add a little bit of a higher dimension in your garden. Here's a nice surprise in June. Coyote mint, Monardella villosa. Kind of a smaller plant, would be nice in groupings, and don't notice it too much until all of a sudden in June. Has a nice bloom and nice color. Here's another picture of coyote mint, Monardella villosa. Nice blooms. Here's a nice summer plant. We've looked at this before. Grindelia camporum, Central Valley gum plant. Nice summer color, bright yellow. Pretty indistinct the rest of the time of year. You do cut it back, as I mentioned last month. We see some yarrow, still flowering. It will with moisture. Here's an interesting plant, and quite honestly one we really don't know what to do with. It's a wild lavender, and it dies back. It's completely deciduous. It drops all its leaves during the winter, and there's just these sticks sticking up, which some people really like, but for a normal garden I don't think, or it may fit in. Let me know if this is something of interest. And then it starts back again at the base and it'll grow out, and it has a long time to grow. So it's a type of lavender, and I'll put the specific name on the screen for the video. Wanted to get a good look at desert willow, Chelopsis linearis. Started flowering again. It was flowering earlier and then stopped. All these shoots will eventually have flowers, and it has a long bloom time. This is really a nice tree for a native garden. Doesn't grow real fast. It can get up to 14-15 feet. It can also be more bush-like depending on how you prune it. So the higher you want it, or the less branching, just prune the lower limbs, as we've done to some extent here, and that'll encourage the plant to grow taller. This one has to be 8 foot tall. I think it's in its 4th year of growth. One of our favorites. Here's a nice picture from above section of the garden. We may catch some hummingbirds in here. They're out. You can hear them. Certainly you can see, or maybe you can see the bees on the buckwheats, the desert marigold. Nice picture. Here's a nice look at the garden. On the right hand side is Penstemon incertus, western desert penstemon. You see the alpine Cleveland sage that we looked at this month. In the back there's an oak coming up, a patchy plume in the far back, and above that some Toyon, Heteromelius arbutifolia. A patchy plume is Fuchsia paradoxa. A nice look. The redbud. So that's the June tour. Obviously less going on this time of year. As like I said earlier, we had some pretty severe weather in terms of temperatures over 100 for a few days at a time, multiple times of that. So the spring plants have shut down and now gone dormant. But a nice look as it lets you see the summer color that's possible in a native garden. And we'll take another look at that. So thanks very much. This is Carl with Blossom Hill Native Plants. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next month.